What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today to recap the first day of the Combine. A lot of stuff happened last night. A lot of stuff will happen tonight when we get the running back testing numbers. But today's video, I'm basically going to break down everything that we learned about these wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks from Combine Day 1. I'm going to start with the guys that measured in, who were the winners, who were the losers, and then I'm going to go down DLF's Superflex ADP and just kind of briefly go over each guy that in that order and talk about how each guy tested or if they didn't test, whatever the case is, and then a quick tight end recap at the end. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy. Check out the Patreon if you enjoy the content on the channel and you want to support us over there. Now you know what's coming next. Okay, so we're going to start with the measurements, and honestly, this is like probably the more important part of the Combine. I know everybody gets excited about the 40s, myself included. I tweeted out some ignorant shit after Treylon Burks ran 4.55, and I was like, that hurts Treylon Burks. I'm like, to some degree it does, but I probably overreacted a little bit. But I put out a thread on Twitter. If you guys are interested in the measurements, I put out a thread on Twitter, and I will add the running backs today. Go follow me over there. It's my pinned tweet. My Twitter's on the screen right now, and I went over every single player and kind of outlined where their measurements were from like credible sources and stuff. But here's what the biggest winners and losers were. And for the most part, this is going to be about wide receivers because that's the position we cared most about yesterday. Drake London was the first guy that measured in. Instead of 6'5", 210 like he was listed, he came in at about 6'4", 219, 220. So that is great. It makes the BMI people shut the fuck up, which is always a good, positive of these guys weighing in, is that the BMI people can shut the hell up. But yeah, Drake London weighing in nearly at 220 pounds was very, very impressive to see. That's exactly what we wanted to see out of Drake London. Yeah, he's 6'4" or 6'3" and 3/4 or whatever he ended up being. But I still have a lot of faith in Drake London, given the production that I saw in the field. Matt Corral at the quarterback position, he weighed a little bit heavier than we expected, which is also intriguing to see because I had some concerns basically that Matt Corral was listed at 6'1", 205. I had some concerns that the dude would come in at like 195, 200 pounds. The fact that he weighed in at 1.5 and 212 is definitely encouraging to see. So good news on Matt Corral there. He didn't end up testing or anything, but all he did was really weigh in. He'll be testing at his pro day because I guess the ankle injury that he suffered isn't 100% healthy yet. Now, Kenny Pickett's hand size was a big topic of discussion yesterday, got memed into the fucking stratosphere, but realistically, I don't really care. I don't care what his hand size is. Kenny Pickett, I haven't watched yet. I haven't watched his film yet. I haven't graded him yet, but his hand size, I highly doubt is going to factor into his grade. Yeah, there's like a list of not a lot of quarterbacks with this small of a hand size, but he just got small hands. There's not a lot of grown men with as small hands as he has. 8.5 inches, that's smaller than my hands. So this dude has small hands for whatever reason. The fumbles were an issue for him, I guess, a little bit in college, but I'm not really concerned about it. So again, wide receivers are the more important position. Some of the wide receivers weighed in a little light. And I got to imagine some of these guys slim down to run fast, which, is understandable, but I honestly would have rather seen them run a little bit slower and weigh over 190 pounds. You guys can see Garrett Wilson came in just a touch below 6 feet and only 183 pounds when he was listed, I believe, around 190, 195. So that's a little bit concerning because I did talk about that size threshold as being 6 foot 190. But again, like I said, Deontay Johnson's and Jalen Waddle's have kind of dispelled that narrative that you need to be a certain level of size to produce in the NFL for fantasy. So I'm not that concerned, but being under 190 pounds was definitely a benchmark that I just wish Garrett Wilson hit. And then Jameson Williams came in a little bit lighter as well, 179 pounds. I don't know if that's because of the ACL tear, hasn't been able to work out or whatever, but that's what he weighed in at. Jahan Dotson also didn't clear 180 pounds, but he did clear 5'10" and nearly 5'11". So that, like, his height's fine, but I wish he was a little bit thicker. If he was 185, 190 pounds, he would check another box there. But the day 2 wide receivers, so the guys that I just mentioned are probably all going to go in the first round. Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, and Jahan Dotson. These day 2 wide receivers do have some size. And We'll start, obviously, you guys can see them on the screen right now, but George Pickens, he weighed in 6'3", 195 pounds, good size for him. Some wide receiver Justin Ross came in 6'4", 205 pounds with pretty big hands and good length as well. So he's definitely a guy that I'm intrigued to see him test at his pro day. He didn't test at the combine. I guess he's still, dealing with some injuries or something like that, but he basically opted out of testing. I'm very curious to see how Justin Ross tests. And I also want to hear how his medicals checked out as far as the neck injury that kept him out his junior season at Clemson. And then Purdue wide receiver David Bell weighed in at 6'1", 212 as well. Good size for him. And then also you can see some of these other guys that they're probably like tier 3, tier 4 wide receivers, but Christian Watson, 6'4", 208. We already saw him weigh in at the Senior Bowl, but good size for him. Jalen Tolbert, 6'1", 194, pretty decent size there. And Cincinnati wide receiver Alec Pierce, who had a great workout, 6'3", 211 pounds. So I talked about 2 wide receivers in the preview video that I needed to see measure in and weigh in at a certain size threshold. And the first guy was Skyy Moore. I didn't want to see him come in, 5'7", 175 pounds or something like that. He came in 5'10", 195. So big time box checked for Skyy Moore. He reaches, the minimum size threshold that I'm not concerned about your size. If you're over 5'10" and you weigh over 190 pounds, I am not concerned about your size one bit. And then Wandale Robinson was the other guy I was concerned about his size, and he didn't pass with such flying colors. He had 5'8", 178 pounds. In terms of Wandale Robinson, I know his target share is high. I know, he's pretty explosive on tape, but he's basically a less athletic Rondale Moore with less production. And I guess he's a little bit bigger than Rondale Moore, but Rondale Moore, I believe, weighed heavier than him. So with Wandale Robinson, I'm really not going to be interested for fantasy purposes until I see where he exactly gets drafted, because I don't want to draft a guy that's 5'8" and 178 pounds who got drafted on day 3 in my rookie drafts. I just don't think that's a good combination in terms of hit rate. So I'll just wait to see where Wandale gets drafted. If he gets drafted on day 2, I might have to reevaluate, but for the most part, I'm probably going to be out on Wandale Robinson. In terms of the top tight ends, I'll just briefly go over these because the top tight ends didn't do a whole lot of testing. A lot of them did on-field drills only. Trey McBride came in, and I talked about this in the tight ends video, or in the video previewing the combine. The size threshold that we want for tight ends is 6'4" plus, 245 pounds plus. Now, Trey McBride came in almost exactly at that size, 6'4", 246. Isaiah Likely, again, came in exactly at that size, 6'4.5", 245. Jalen Weidermeyer, 6'4", 255, so a little bit heavier. And then a couple other guys, Jake Ferguson, 6'5", 250, Charlie Kohler, 6'6", 252. Then we had Grant Calcaterra, who was formerly at Oklahoma with Kyler Murray. He transferred to SMU after, I believe he retired for a year. He came in a little bit smaller. I think he was like 6'3", 241 pounds or something, but he tested pretty well. So that's kind of just the overview on the tight end position. I know it's not all that important this year. The tight end class isn't great, but it is, probably going to be a good source of 3rd round and 4th round rookie picks for those of you guys that have a lot of those. So with the measurements, that was all the measurements. And again, if you want to see them all, I have them in my pinned tweet on Twitter. If you go over to Twitter, follow me over there. But the workouts were interesting. And I'm not going to talk about every single, player that worked out, but just the notable stuff. And let's start with the quarterbacks. I'll just briefly go over the quarterbacks. Remember when I put out the video of what to watch for at the combine, the most important thing for me about the quarterbacks was the chatter. I didn't care so much about their testing and their on-field drills. I wanted to hear what they were saying about the quarterbacks. And if you paid attention to the chatter, you guys know that as it stands, my current quarterback 1 is Sam Howell, based on who I've graded. I have not graded Matt Corral. I have not graded Kenny Pickett. I have not graded Desmond Ridder yet. But my current quarterback 1 among Malik Willis and Sam Howell is Sam Howell. And I got to be objective here. I didn't see a whole lot of, Sam Howell going in the 1st round type of chatter. What I saw was Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis be the majority of the talk among the, Daniel Jeremiahs and Rich Eisens in the booth and stuff. Those guys seem to be 1st round locks for me in terms of where they're going to go in the NFL draft. And then Sam Howell, Matt Corral, probably also a 1st round lock, but a little bit less so than those other 2 guys. Sam Howell, Matt Corral, and even Desmond Ridder are probably hopefuls for the 1st round. And it was pretty clear to me that Willis and Pickett were the center of attention. The way that NFL Network decided to center those guys, it really did seem like they know something about where they're going to go in the draft. And I think Kenny Pickett is starting to, he's going to be the result of the fact that Joe Burrow made the Super Bowl this year, because he had like a similar career trajectory as Joe Burrow, and everybody's really excited about Joe Burrow right now in NFL circles. So I think that's pushing Kenny Pickett up the board. And I think had Baker Mayfield had the year that Joe Burrow had, we'd be talking about this, the same thing for Sam Howell, which is really, really weird. that's how the things work. But I do think it's got some validity there. So talking about the quarterbacks, there was a couple that tested. Desmond Ridder actually tested really, really well, ran a sub 4.5 40-yard dash. This puts him in like, good Konami code range. If he gets good draft capital, late first, early second round, this is a guy that you could probably get as a good value in the second round of rookie drafts. And this is a dude that if he gets on the field is going to run, and he can run. Like he was out running, Marcus Mariota and Russell Wilson's times when they showed the like simulcam and stuff. So that is definitely encouraging to see from Desmond Ridder. He's got some intrigue as a second day quarterback. Kenny Pickett also tested pretty well. 4.67 is where he ran. And for reference, Josh Allen ran like a 4.75. So Kenny Pickett's got some wheels. We saw it on the run where he famously didn't slide and kept running. So Kenny Pickett not on display a lot at Pittsburgh where he was running, but he does, have pretty good speed. So that is definitely intriguing to see. Malik Willis and Sam Howell, they threw the ball in the drills and stuff. They didn't test. Malik Willis stole the show with some deep balls. Everybody was really impressed with his arm. And I guess interview-wise, he was very impressive. And there was a video surfacing on Twitter of him giving clothes to a homeless person, which obviously speaks to his character. And I'm sure a lot of NFL teams are going to eat that up. But Sam Howell lit up the radar gun with the highest velocity, 59 miles per hour. Sheesh. So it's encouraging that Sam Howell did something of note. He did light up the radar gun, and that was pretty expected. I thought he had a strong arm. I actually thought Malik Willis probably had a stronger arm in terms of velocity than Sam Howell, but Sam Howell beats him out on the radar gun. That was pretty much it for the quarterback position. Let me get into wide receivers because this is probably the more important position. So I'm going to go in order of DLF Superflex rookie ADP and just kind of give comments on each guy based on what they did or didn't do at the combine. Now, the 101 in ADP right now in Superflex leagues is Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks famously did not run a 4.3. That was the big talking point of Treylon Burks, is that everybody thought he was going to be faster, myself included. I got to be honest, I was expecting a freakish time. I thought he was going to crack the 4.3s, high 4.3s, low 4.4s for a 225-pound wide receiver. Again, 4.55 at that size is not bad. It's not a bad time, but we were all expecting better. You can't pretend like we weren't expecting a better time out of him. I'm not going to ding him too hard, but I will lower my grade a little bit in terms of his speed and acceleration as one of the traits that I grade. I had him as 105 out of 110. So I was expecting a freakish time, and I'm just going to knock him down to 100 out of 110 because it's still good time for his size, weight adjusted speed score, and all that. It is a good time, but again, we were expecting something freakish. So Treylon Burks got dinged a little bit for how he tested. Also didn't jump very well either. 33 inches, 7.28 3 cone, which I mean is fine for his size. 10.2 broad jump. Okay, combine out of Treylon Burks. I expected him to be a lot freakier than that, so I'm a little bit disappointed, but I'm not going to ding him too much. He's still a top tier wide receiver for me. He's still my wide receiver 2 behind Drake London. So 102 in ADP is Malik Willis, who I covered already, so I'm not going to cover him. 103 and 104 are 2 running backs, so I'm not going to cover those guys. 105, after those running backs, we have Garrett Wilson. And I think Garrett Wilson had the most under the radar combine I've seen in a while, because Garrett Wilson quieted a lot of the question marks that I had for him. And obviously, I would have liked to see him weigh in above 190 pounds. So his size isn't ideal, as you guys can see on the screen. But running a 4.38 for Garrett Wilson is a phenomenal time. I did not expect him to run that fast. It's one of the quietest 4.3s I think you'll ever see, especially out of a bona fide first-round prospect that had speed concerns. I'm very surprised that it wasn't talked about more. Now, probably the reason it wasn't talked about more is because his teammate, Chris Olave, ran a 4.26 unofficially. But once they actually adjusted the times to the official numbers, Garrett Wilson ran faster than him. He ran a 4.38 compared to a 4.39. So the fact that Chris Olave was the talk of the town after that 40, and Garrett Wilson actually ran a faster 40 when I didn't think, that I thought Chris Olave was going to beat him by a 10th or a 10th and a half of a second. So the fact that Garrett Wilson ran faster than Chris Olave is very, very impressive. A sub 4.40 with Garrett Wilson's film. In my grades, I gave Wilson an 85 out of 110 for speed and acceleration. I wrote that up, a couple weeks ago when I first graded him, and I said he'd probably run a 4.5 at the combine. Well, I just raised it to 105 out of 110 because he's clearly faster than I thought. And I dinged him 5 points for coming in under 190 pounds, but his grade went up after this combine for me. He's still wide receiver 3, but he's a lot closer to Treylon Burks now. It was a little bit of a, Drake London 1A, Treylon Burks 1B, and then Garrett Wilson closely behind those guys. But now it's more like 1, 2, 3. And those guys are a lot closer. So that's kind of how things changed for me in terms of my grades after the first day of the combine. 106 was Matt Corral. He didn't test, but a good weigh-in, like I said. Kenny Pickett, also, I discussed him already. 108, Drake London didn't test, but will test at his pro day, and a good weigh-in for him, so no concerns there. I wanted to see him run. He's obviously not going to run at the combine. Got to add some time to his 40 once he ends up running it. Please don't run as slow as David Bell ran. 109, we have Sam Howell. I already mentioned he had a solid day. 111 is Jameson Williams, and he didn't test, obviously, because he tore his ACL in the national championship game, but we did get positive news about his ACL, which was the number one most important thing for me coming out of the combine for Jameson Williams. It sounds like he's ahead of schedule or on schedule, whatever you want to call it. Came in a little bit lighter though. He was listed at 6'2", 190. Came in a little bit under 6'2" and 179 pounds to weigh in. So hopefully he can get back up to that 190 range, because I do think that's a little bit of a sturdier frame for a guy that's a bit taller for a deep threat. 112 is Chris Olave. Like I said, he ran the most disappointing 4.39 in the NFL history, because everybody thought he ran a 4.26 on the unofficial time. I don't know how the hell they were that off on the unofficial time. I guess Charlie Casserly was doing the Lord's work before, but you guys can see his Math Bomb score there. And for reference, if you guys are wondering what these scores are, this guy Math Bomb on Twitter at Math Bomb does relative athletic scores. And it's basically based on all the, players he has in his database. So the green is obviously very good. Yellow is about average. Red is below average. So knowing that he and Wilson, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, are the same speed is very interesting to me, because that was the trump card that Olave had over Garrett Wilson, and he doesn't have that trump card anymore. So Olave probably took a bit of a hit for me, not in terms of like my grade, but I just thought he was going to be a lot faster than Garrett Wilson. And that speaks more to Garrett Wilson than it does to Chris Olave. The draft capital for Chris Olave will be undeniable. He's going to go in the first round. It sounds by all accounts that this dude's a lock for the top 20, top 25 overall picks, based on the way that they were talking about him on the broadcast and the way that everybody talks about him on NFL Network, and some of the teams have been talking about him according to those sources. So Chris Olave, probably going to be a first round wide receiver, tested pretty well, solid college production. We can move on. 201 is David Bell in ADP. Weighed in excellent, right? He started off the day great. 6'1", 212 pounds. That is a phenomenal size for David Bell's skill set. A guy that has great hands, can probably play a big slot role or a flanker role in the NFL, but his testing was lackluster, to say the least. We knew this about David Bell. I knew he wasn't going to be, lighting up the radar gun, but it doesn't change the fact that he put up elite numbers in college in terms of his, target share and all this production and stuff. So that is first and foremost what we need to focus on with David Bell. But 4.65 is slow, man. It's slower than I was expecting. I wanted him to be in the mid 4.5s, low 4.5s, and that's where I graded him upon that, expectation. Should be a great value in drafts at the 1-2 turn or early to mid second even. But I had to lower his speed grade a little bit, because he did run a little bit slower than I thought. And as you guys will recall, on Monday or whatever day that I did the combine preview, I talked about the biggest predictive metric for wide receivers was not being 4.6 or slower. And David Bell is obviously 4.65. Only Keenan Allen, Jarvis Landry, and Cooper Kupp have run slower than 4.6 and finished as a wide receiver 1 in points per game since 2015. And Jarvis Landry, interestingly enough, was my comparison for David Bell in David Bell's tail of the tape. So hopefully he can turn into Jarvis Landry, but his speed is definitely a question mark at the next level. And he didn't really test all that well on the other drills either. So not great day for David Bell outside of his size. 203 after Kyron Williams in ADP is George Pickens. George Pickens had a solid day, I would say. Good size, like I said, 6'3", 195 pounds. Ran a 4.47, which I think is good. I didn't think he's like the fastest dude in the world on tape. I know a lot of other people kind of share that sentiment, but the fact that he ran 4.47, I think is pretty solid. Jumps were solid as well. 10.5 and a 33-inch vert. And medically, I think there's no concerns at this point. He suffered his torn ACL in April of 2021. We're now about 11 months removed from that. He's already been playing in games and testing at his highest level at the combine. So I think George Pickens is locked and loaded, going to be a day 2 pick in the NFL draft, and a guy that needs to be in consideration for you guys at the back end of the first, early second round of rookie drafts. 204, we have Jahan Dotson. He ran a 4.43 40-yard dash, which is a great number. But I think that was expected that he was going to run fast. I heard a lot of people say he might run low 4.3s or even high 4.2s. So maybe even a little bit underwhelming relative to some people's expectation. The one thing that I will say about Jahan Dotson, though, is number one, he weighed in under 180 pounds. So that is definitely not a good sign. We know that, typically you want to be over 190 pounds. Again, I'm not going to ding him too much, because we have guys like Deontay Johnson who are 190 pounds that just finished as wide receiver 1s, and, Jalen Waddle and guys like that. But the discouraging thing for me was the fact that he ran a 7.28 3-cone, which is the same time that Treylon Burks ran. And Treylon Burks has, 40 pounds of size on Jahan Dotson, and he ran the same 3-cone drill. And it's not because Treylon Burks ran a great 3-cone. It's because Jahan Dotson ran a bad 3-cone. And Jahan Dotson, when you watch him on tape, you'd think agility is one of his best attributes. And the fact that he wasn't really, that agile in terms of his testing, that calls into question a couple things. So hopefully at Penn State's pro day, he can get that number down a little bit, because I do think he was supposed to run a sub-7 3-cone at his size with his skill set. So those were the notable names. I'm just going to, gloss over a couple other guys that are worth mentioning here. Christian Watson, who was at the Senior Bowl, who we knew was going to test well. He also gave us like an Olave-like freak out when he ran an unofficial 4.28 at 6'4", 208 pounds. But that was eventually corrected to a 4.36 officially, but still a phenomenal time for that size. Also jumped out the gym, 38.5-inch vert, 11.4 broad jump. This is a day 2 wide receiver, guaranteed. He's going to go in the second, third round, 100% to an NFL team. And I think a lot of teams are going to really, really covet the fact that he was at the Senior Bowl, and the fact that coming from a small school, he's really checked all the boxes that you could ask for. His relative athletic score was the best out of any wide receiver, 9.98. Basically unofficially ranked among like the top 35 wide receivers in the last like 2000. That's in MathBomb's database. So definitely ideal for Christian Watson there. Skyy Moore, like I said, he already showed out with the weighing in over 5'10", weighing in over 190 pounds. He also ran a 4.41 officially in the 40-yard dash. Not great on the agilities, which presents a similar concern to Jahan Dotson, but more good than bad for him at the combine. And I also find it notable that Daniel Jeremiah also said about Skyy Moore that there's no chance that this guy gets out of the second round. He said that, he tweeted it, and he said it on the broadcast. So the fact that he believes this is a day, a round 2 wide receiver, definitely puts him in range for the early to mid second round consideration for a lot of people in rookie drafts. Wandale Robinson, 4.44 run, met everywhere else. Like I said, his size kind of wrote him off for me until I see where he gets drafted. Justin Ross didn't test, but great weigh-in, should test at Clemson's pro day. Jalen Tolbert and Calvin Austin, both of those guys tested well. Calvin Austin, a little bit undersized. Jalen Tolbert, a little bit older and coming from a small school. We'll have to see what those guys get in terms of draft capital. But I mean, we saw a freaking Tutu Atwell go in the second round last year. So it wouldn't shock me if Calvin Austin's a day 2 wide receiver either, because both of those guys were at the Senior Bowl, and teams, tend to covet that. Alec Pierce and Tyquan Thornton, both these dudes ran like the wind. Alec Pierce had the second highest relative athletic score of any of the wide receivers with a 9.62, 6'3", 211 pounds, ran a 4.41, also jumped out the gym, 40.5-inch vert and a 10.9 broad. So he had really good testing numbers. I'm not really sure what NFL teams think about him, but he was, he went to a school that had a lot of big competition, playing with Desmond Ridder and stuff like that. So we'll have to see where he gets drafted, but his production profile isn't the greatest, to say the least. And then in terms of the top tight ends, like I said, McBride, Weidermeyer, Isaiah Likely, none of them tested. So I didn't get anything outside of the fact that they all reached the 6'4", 245 plus threshold and did on-field workouts. I do think it's interesting, though, and worth noting that UCLA's Greg Dulcich was actually the highest graded tight end for Daniel Jeremiah in his top 50. He was the only one at the tight end position in his top 50. So he thinks he's the best tight end in this draft. That might be in line with what some NFL teams think as well. So we'll have to see what happens there. So that's everything from day 1 of the combine. Again, day 2 of the combine is happening today. In the next, when you guys are watching this, we'll probably have some running back weigh-in. So if you are watching this right now and you want to know what the running backs weighed in at, check me out on Twitter. I'll definitely have those numbers posted as soon as we get them. If you enjoyed this video, like the video, comment any of your thoughts down below. If this is the first video of ours that you're checking out, just hit the subscribe button. You will not regret it. Check out the Patreon if you want to support us as well. Patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. Other links in the description for you to check out. Peace out, guys. I'll talk to you soon.